Okay, I'm going to make a few short little videos that kind of go hand in hand. This first one's going to be about half steps and whole steps, and I'm going to do another one about accidentals. You can see that this lesson goes to accidentals, and then there's another lesson that talks about the major scale. So we'll be doing a few of those, but in separate videos. So accidentals. Nope, that's not what I meant to say. Half steps and whole steps. A half step, if you're looking at the piano, is when you pick a note, and then from that note you go up just by one note. And you got to make sure you include your black keys, your white keys, everybody. So you're going just up or down by the very next note next to the note that you're playing. Let me show you an example. So it sounds like this. It sounds like Jaws if you play it a lot. This is this note you started with. Half step up would be going to the nearest key, which happens to be this black key right here. It's not always from a black key to a white key or a white key to a black key. Sometimes it's just two white keys. So in this example here, you can see that there's no black key separating these two white notes. So for half step, you would just go from one to the next. A whole step is two half steps. So in this example here, if 1 to 2 is a half step, 2 to 3 is a half step. So then from 1 to 3 would be a whole step. Sounds a little bit different. It sounds like do, re. Do, re. So that's our half steps and whole steps. I want to show you, before we go on to sharps and flats, a few different things on here. So if I were to start on this note and do a half step above, it would be this note right here. If I were to start on this note and do a half step above, it would be right there because there's no black key in between. If I were to start on this note and do a half step below, I would go that way in the keyboard because these are our lower notes and these are our higher notes in that direction. So if I were to start here and go down, I would be going to that key to the left. These are all half steps. Now for whole steps, I have to do two half steps. Trying not to erase my keyboard. So if I start here and do a whole step, I would do one half step up to here and then a half step. So that would be my whole step from that note. I could also start here and do a whole step, which would be two half steps. This one's a little bit weird. So there's no black key up here. So my first half step would go right here. And then my second half step would go up here. Oops, my pen's dying. So that would be my whole step from that white key to that black key. Whole steps are easy to see as long as you've got one note in between. So I could see this note to that note. It's got a note in between. I could say this note to that note because it's got a note in between. I could say this note to that note because it's got a note in between. Whole steps, half steps. When we start talking about scales, you will we'll tell you the pattern of whole steps and half steps for certain scales. For example, if you're doing a major scale, well, you could start your major scale on C and life would be easy and you would only have to do white notes. Your major scale would be whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. But you could also start on different notes and it'd be different. So for my major scale again, whole step, if I start here, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. It gets a little bit more complicated, so we'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, so that's whole steps and half steps. Something easy to remember, the distance between do to re is always going to be the same. Distance between re to mi is always going to be the same. Mi to fa, etc. And we'll talk about that in the next video. Okay, bye. Whoops, I didn't actually end it. Awkward.